Let me ask you something. You went to school, you worked hard, you got a job, you saved money, you bought a house, you put money into a retirement account, and you were told that following these steps was the smart, responsible way to build a good life. So why do most people who do all of this still end up financially stressed at 50, working longer than they planned with less security than they expected? The answer is uncomfortable. And Robert Kiyosaki gives it directly in one of his most honest books. He says the financial advice you have been following your entire life was never designed to make you wealthy. It was designed to make other people wealthy. Using you. He calls these pieces of advice scams, not because the people who gave them to you were evil, but because they are conventional wisdom that quietly works against your financial future while sounding completely reasonable on the surface. In this video, I am going to walk you through the 8 financial scams Kiyosaki identifies in this book. Not just what they are, but why they work, why intelligent people believe them, and what a genuinely different approach to money actually looks like. This is not a comfortable video. Some of what you are about to hear will contradict things you have believed for years. But if you have ever felt like you are working hard and still not getting ahead, what you are about to hear might finally explain why. Stay with me. Scam number 1. Go to school and get a good job. This is the advice almost every parent gives their child. Work hard in school, get good grades, get into a good university, then get a good job. The logic is clear. Education leads to a good career. A good career leads to financial security. Kiyosaki does not argue that education is worthless. What he argues is that the education most people receive teaches them to be employees. It teaches them to work for money. It does not teach them how money actually works. It does not teach them to read financial statements. It does not explain the difference between income and wealth. It does not show them how the tax system treats employees differently from investors and business owners. Here is the specific problem. When you get a good job, the money you earn is taxed before you see it. The government takes its share off the top. Whatever is left is what you have to live on, invest, and save. You work hard. You earn a salary, and a significant portion of it leaves your hands before you ever touch it. A business owner or investor operates differently. They earn revenue. They spend money on legitimate business expenses, and they pay taxes on what remains after those expenses. The structure is fundamentally different, and the education system prepares almost everyone for the first structure while barely mentioning the second. The scam is not that education is bad. The scam is that school prepares you for employee life while teaching you almost nothing about financial life. You graduate knowing how to get a job. You graduate not knowing how wealth is actually built. Scam number 2. Save money. For most of your life, you have probably been told that saving money is the foundation of financial security. Spend less than you earn. Put money in a savings account. Build your emergency fund. Be responsible. This advice sounds completely sensible. And it would be correct if money held its value over time. But it does not. Inflation is the slow, invisible tax on savings. Every year, the purchasing power of the money sitting in your account quietly decreases. The interest rate on most savings accounts is lower than the rate of inflation. This means that in real terms, the money you are saving is losing value every single year, even as the number in your account stays the same or grows slightly. Kiyosaki makes a specific distinction that most people never hear. He separates saving from investing. Saving money in a bank account produces minimal return. It protects you from immediate emergency but builds no meaningful wealth. Investing money in assets that generate income or appreciate in value does something entirely different. The person who saves their entire working life accumulates a pool of money that inflation steadily erodes. The person who invests in income-generating assets accumulates a system that produces money over time. The difference between these two paths, compounded over 20 or 30 years, is not small. It is the difference between financial comfort and financial dependence. Saving is not wrong. Having 3 to 6 months of expenses as a safety net is genuinely important. But treating saving as the primary strategy for building wealth is, in Kiyosaki's framework, one of the most expensive mistakes most people make with money. Scam number 3. Your house is your greatest asset. This is possibly the most emotionally loaded scam in the entire book. Homeownership is tied to identity, to success, to the idea of the good life. In most cultures, owning your home is not just a financial decision. It is proof that you have arrived. Kiyosaki challenges this directly using the same definition of assets and liabilities he introduced in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. And then he asks the question most people never ask about their home. Every month, your house takes money out of your pocket. Mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, utilities. Your house costs you money every single month without exception. It does not generate income. It does not pay you. You pay it. This makes your home, by Kiyosaki's definition, a liability, not an asset. Now, a house does typically appreciate in value over time. You may eventually sell it for more than you paid, but appreciation is not the same as income. The value increase is theoretical until you sell, and in the meantime, you have spent decades of cash flow maintaining the property. A property that someone else rents from you generates income every month. That property puts money in your pocket. That is an asset. The house you live in takes money out. That is a liability. This does not mean homeownership is always the wrong choice. For many people, it makes total sense. But the idea that buying the most expensive home you can afford is automatically the smartest financial decision because your home is your best asset is, Kiyosaki argues, one of the most widespread pieces of financial misinformation people receive. Scam number 4. Get out of debt. Most financial advisors tell you to pay down your debt as quickly as possible. Credit cards, loans, mortgages, clear them all. Debt is a burden. Debt is dangerous. Debt is what keeps people poor. Kiyosaki makes a distinction that most personal finance education completely ignores. He separates bad debt from good debt, and this distinction changes everything. Bad debt is money borrowed to buy things that go down in value or generate no income. A car loan. Credit card debt for consumer spending, a personal loan for a vacation. These forms of debt cost you money with no financial return. You are correct to eliminate them as quickly as possible. Good debt is money borrowed to acquire something that generates income greater than the cost of the debt. An investor who borrows money at 5% interest to buy a rental property generating 10% return is using debt as a tool. The debt is producing income rather than consuming it. The math is working in the investor's favor rather than against them. The wealthy do not avoid debt. They use it strategically to acquire assets that generate more income than the debt costs. Treating all debt as equally bad, eliminating it regardless of what it was used to acquire, prevents many people from accessing one of the primary tools that sophisticated investors use to build wealth. This does not mean you should go into debt carelessly. It means you need to understand which kind of debt you have before deciding the best strategy for managing it. Scam number 5. Live below your means. This is advice that seems responsible and even virtuous. Do not overspend. Do not live beyond your means. Keep your lifestyle modest. Save the difference. Kiyosaki has a specific problem with this as a primary financial strategy. He argues that telling people to live below their means asks them to permanently shrink their ambitions rather than expand their capabilities. It solves the income versus spending problem by reducing spending rather than by increasing income. And it trains people to think smaller rather than to think bigger. He does not argue that reckless spending is wise. He argues that the more productive question is not how do I spend less, but how do I earn more? And specifically, how do I create or acquire assets that generate income passively so that my financial life expands rather than simply contracts? The person who lives below their means by cutting expenses is fighting a shrinking battle. There is a limit to how much you can cut. The person who expands their means by building income-generating assets is playing a different game entirely, one with no natural ceiling. This is a mindset difference more than a tactical one. The person focused on living below their means is oriented toward scarcity, toward preserving what they have. The person focused on expanding their means is oriented toward abundance, toward building more. Both matter, but which orientation becomes primary makes a significant difference in the financial trajectory of your life over time. Scam number 6. Diversify your investments. Diversification is the standard advice in almost every investment conversation. Spread your money across many different assets. Do not put all your eggs in one basket. This way, if one investment fails, the others protect you. Kiyosaki challenges this and references Warren Buffett's more specific position on diversification. Buffett has said that diversification is protection against ignorance. If you know what you are doing, it makes little sense to diversify. Kiyosaki's argument is that widespread diversification is designed for people who do not know enough about any specific investment to put meaningful money into it confidently. If you spread your money across hundreds of stocks in an index fund, you are essentially saying that you do not know enough to choose specific investments, so you will own a little of everything. This produces average returns because you are, by definition, invested in everything, the good and the bad in equal measure. Kiyosaki suggests a different approach. Develop genuine expertise in one specific area. Understand it deeply. Invest there with significant conviction rather than spreading thin uncertainty across everything. This is not an argument against all diversification. It is an argument that expertise-based concentration in areas you genuinely understand can produce significantly better results than uninformed diversification in areas you do not understand. And most people are taught to diversify precisely because the financial industry profits from managing broadly diversified portfolios on their behalf. Scam number 7. Invest for the long term in the stock market. This is the foundational advice of mainstream financial planning. Put money into the stock market regularly. Do not try to time it. Hold for the long term. Historically, markets go up over time. Be patient. Kiyosaki's critique is specific. The people who give this advice are typically the financial advisors, mutual fund companies, and brokers who earn fees on the money you invest. The longer you invest through their products, the more fees they collect. Their financial incentive is for you to keep money in the market indefinitely and to discourage you from managing it actively. More specifically, he points out that the conventional long-term investor is entirely at the mercy of market movements they cannot control. A market crash near your retirement date can eliminate decades of accumulated gains in months. This happened to millions of people in 2001 and again in 2008. The advice was to stay in the market for the long term. For people who needed that money shortly after the crash, the long term was not an available option. Kiyosaki is not arguing that stock market investing is always wrong. He is arguing that blindly following the buy and hold forever strategy without understanding what you own, without knowing when to enter or exit, and without recognizing whose financial interests the advice actually serves is not a strategy. It is hope dressed up as a plan. Scam number 8. Work hard. This is the most fundamental scam of all because it is embedded in the most basic values many people are raised with. Work hard. Give your best. Put in the hours. Dedication and effort will be rewarded. Kiyosaki does not argue that hard work is wrong. He argues that hard work directed exclusively at earning a paycheck is a trap. The harder you work as an employee, the more money you earn. The more money you earn, the more taxes you pay. The more taxes you pay, the more you need to earn. You work harder to earn more to pay more to need more. The cycle is self-reinforcing, and it keeps you dependent on the continued exchange of your time for money. The wealthy do not primarily get wealthy by working harder. They get wealthy by building systems that produce income without requiring their constant presence. The business that runs without its founder. The property that generates rent while the owner sleeps. The investment portfolio that pays dividends without active management. These are the mechanisms of lasting wealth, and none of them are primarily about working harder. This does not mean the wealthy do not work hard, especially in the early stages of building something. They often work extraordinarily hard, but the direction of that hard work is different. They are building systems rather than trading hours. They are creating assets rather than earning wages. The scam is that you are taught to work hard within a system that efficiently extracts the value of that hard work for someone else. Your employer, the government, the bank. And the advice to simply work harder is advice to participate more enthusiastically in that extraction rather than to build something that serves your own financial interest. Now let us be honest about this book. Kiyosaki is a compelling and provocative writer. He simplifies complex ideas in ways that make them accessible, which is genuinely valuable. His core insight, that the conventional wisdom most people receive about money is oriented toward making them reliable employees and consumers rather than financially independent individuals, is both important and largely correct, but his prescriptions are not equally applicable to everyone. The advice to stop saving and start investing assumes you have money to invest after expenses, which many people do not. The dismissal of employee life does not account for the stability and benefits that employment provides, which matter enormously to people with families and genuine financial constraints. And his enthusiasm for real estate debt as a tool requires knowledge, access to capital, and risk tolerance that are not uniformly available. His financial life has also had complications that he does not always discuss fully. One of his companies filed for bankruptcy in 2012. He has publicly disclosed being significantly in debt as of 2024. The gap between the wealthy, independent investor persona his books promote and the actual financial reality of his own business career is worth acknowledging. None of this makes his ideas wrong. It makes them incomplete. And a genuinely useful engagement with this book means taking the conceptual framework seriously while applying appropriate skepticism to the specific tactics and to the confidence with which they are presented. So what do you actually take from this? The most valuable thing this book offers is a specific question to ask about every piece of financial advice you receive. Who benefits when I follow this advice? When a financial advisor tells you to diversify into a managed fund, who collects the fee? When a mortgage lender approves you for the maximum amount, who benefits from the maximum loan? When your employer tells you the company retirement plan is your best option, who is managing those assets and charging fees to do so? This does not mean the advice is always wrong, but it means the person giving it is not always a neutral party. Their incentives shape what they recommend. And understanding whose interests are served by specific financial advice is one of the most important forms of financial literacy you can develop. The second most valuable thing is the shift from asking how do I earn more to asking how do I build something that earns for me. This shift in orientation, from income-focused thinking to asset-focused thinking, is the beginning of a genuinely different relationship with money. It does not happen overnight. It requires learning. It requires small steps taken consistently over time. But the direction matters enormously, and most people never take it because no one ever told them it existed. The third thing is simply awareness that the conventional path has conventional outcomes. If you want different results, you need different strategies. And the strategies that are different from the conventional ones are almost never the ones being taught in school, recommended by the mainstream financial industry, or celebrated in popular culture. They are the ones you have to find deliberately, study seriously, and apply thoughtfully. That is the actual gift this book offers. Not a shortcut, not a guaranteed path to wealth. A different set of questions to ask about a system you were placed inside before you were old enough to evaluate it. What you do with those questions is entirely up to you. Thanks for watching all the way through. The scam only works if you never notice it is happening.